Because we've outlined earlier in this podcast, I'm horrible with relationships.
That's what I'm saying. So I'm praying for it. You get what I'm saying? Like, so that is my prayer for you. But my thing is, I think you're... God, please take him all the way down to the ground so he can be humbled. No.
So my intent today was to go through the entire Mike and George podcast where they talked about what happened between Logan and George and Paul, and Mike, all of that stuff. And then also go through Logan's response. I did Logan's response first, thank God. And it ended up being 36 minutes long. And so I chopped a bunch of it down, and bottom line, here's what we're doing, okay? We are going to go through Logan's response with a little bit of their interview added in to give context, because what Logan put out was very convincing. When I first saw it, my response on X, I was like, man, I'm glad I didn't cover the George and Mike podcast because I would have hammered Logan unfairly. Then I did this video, and so I looked very, very surgically at what was really in these text messages and what was in this video, and Logan wildly misrepresented exactly what happened here. He made himself look great in areas where that's not what was really happening, and I could show you exactly what I'm talking about. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through, and I'm going to show what Logan is telling the truth about, at least per what it looks like, and where he has completely misrepresented what was going on, and that is what we're going to do today. So buckle up. This is going to be the definitive analysis of this interaction with these guys. I'm telling you, I challenge anybody to push back on anything that I put in this video. Now, we're basically going to start and finish with the inciting incident that really blew the relationship up, which is when George started his own show and there was an offer given to him to have sponsorship from Celsius, which is Logan's chief rival. And there's one of the most incredible examples of hypocrisy in this thing that it's almost unfathomable, to be perfectly honest with you, because Logan's position on George taking Celsius and remaining on Impulsive is totally sound. However, he is absolutely misrepresenting it from top to bottom, and you're going to go look at some behavior of his own related to his brother and Celsius sponsoring his boxing match and be like, so wait, you didn't understand this concept then, but at this point, it's like, it's a complete deal breaker. Suddenly now you understand how this works when it represents, you know, when it's Prime that's at stake, but when Celsius sponsors your brother's boxing match, you completely don't understand this concept whatsoever. And we'll come back to that. So keep that in mind and let's get started. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. I love all of you guys, even Logan, dude. As soon as you drop the Dylan Dennis lawsuit, I'll quit fucking with you.
Screenshots of $11 million a week that he's making.
This statement is so crazy that it's almost laughable. That would mean I'm making $572 million a year. I'm nowhere near that. What happened was Prime had a very successful month. I think we did like 60 to 70 million, and I sent it to our group chat because I was proud of the business. I was stoked to show the boys, and I think George maybe misinterpreted that as like my personal income.
This is Logan intentionally misrepresenting the context of what George said, okay? Because George did sound like he was saying, this is a guy who's making $11 million a week. That's what he said. But this was in the context of talking about the Celsius offer that he got and that whether or not Logan was going to match it with Prime, which led to the blowout that they had that they have not come back from. Let's review exactly that right here.
I got pushed out, and I'm seeing that I'm getting pushed out, and I start my own show. Do you know what my final straw was?
What?
I got my show going, and then not only was I controlled and pushed around on Impulsive, but then Logan's making calls and directing my show. And I'm saying, hey, man, you can't tell me what to do on my own show. That's not okay.
What's that about?
He told me that I couldn't take Celsius. And then I said, hey, man.
He didn't tell you that you couldn't take Celsius.
Messages.
No, he didn't tell you that you couldn't take Celsius. He
says if I take Celsius, I'm not a part of Impulsive.
Then he told you that if you take Celsius, that you cannot continue to be on Impulsive, which is the core driver for Prime, as you're going to continue to funnel viewership from the Impulsive show back to your show, which promotes a competitive product.
This is a guy who's sending us screenshots of $11 million a week that he's making.
Because he's like, look, dude, just work with me. Like, offer me a deal with Prime so that I can do this and also stay on Impulsive, right? And Logan's like, no, okay? No, I'm not going to offer you anything. You're only in the position you're in because of me. Okay, Logan is going to show a text message later of like how he was very amicable and how he was doing this, but he doesn't offer him a deal and he doesn't want him to, you know, he's acting like, oh, you can't take the Celsius deal and remain on Impulsive. And then George is like, all right, well then just offer me a deal from Prime. Like, give me half, give me a quarter. And Logan's like, no, because Logan wants to fire him and get rid of him. That's what's really going on here, okay? And so when George is saying like, yeah, he's showing us screenshots of $11 million a week, what he's saying is, you're telling me Prime doesn't have the money to sponsor my channel to match a Celsius deal, okay? And Logan represented it as if he was talking about his personal income. That's not what he was saying. He was saying Prime was making $11 million a week. Why wouldn't you just match the Celsius deal? And the answer is because Logan wanted to get rid of George, period. And Logan has the right to get rid of George, okay? But that's what's really going on. You want to understand the miscommunication there? Logan wanted to fire George, and he wasn't being honest about it. He was using the fact that he got a Celsius offer to try to blame it on George the way that you blame you want to break up with a girl and you're like, look, man, like I saw you talking to that guy. I told you 1,000,000 times not to talk to guys at the bar. I didn't even talk to him. He just said hi to me. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear about it. Okay. You're the one that did this. I've told you 1,000,000 times. I don't like it. And you just don't care about my feelings. I can't be with someone who doesn't care about my feelings. And she's like, he's just irrational. Like, all I did was say hi. He's not doesn't give a shit you talked about the dude from the bar. He wants to get rid of you. And in addition to that, Logan is making it seem like George quit, okay? And he's going to show in that text message, this one right here, he also says, it sounds as if he's saying you could come back on Impulsive, after you get this money. He's not saying you can be on Impulsive again. He's saying you could come on as a guest. Read the text message. That's what he's actually saying. And I want to reiterate that this is exactly the right thing, dude. George was not a good culture fit. Mike and Logan are a very different type of group than George. They're not a good culture fit for a show. George is a great podcaster. Logan is a great podcaster. Mike is a great podcaster. Together, not good. Clearly not a good fit, okay? It's just about how things happened, what's true and what's not. It was reasonable for Logan to not let him do that and stay on Impulsive. But somehow when Jake was sponsored by Celsius for his boxing match, he got mad that Jake's team said he can't bring Prime into the building. Of course you can't bring Prime into the building. Same way that you can't have George on your podcast funneling people to his show if they're promoting Celsius. It's your brother. Of course you're going to go to his fight. But acting as if you're shocked you can't bring a bottle of Prime in is ludicrous. Of course you can't bring Prime in. So either that was staged or Logan has no ability to put himself in other people's positions, because that's like the most cut and dry thing. He has a completely sound point with George, and yet when it's him in the identical situation, he's indignant, he's mad, he's like, I'm your brother, dude. This is business, guy. You understood this perfectly when the shoe was on the other foot. And then the Bobby Lee thing. I noticed Logan didn't have anything to say about the Bobby Lee thing, the selective editing, because George, as we'll see right here, says that a bunch of this was edited out, that Bobby Lee sexually assaulted him. And let's watch real quick.
Yeah, I know.
George has been under a tremendous amount of abuse.
George.
No, stop, George. I want you over here with me. George, I want you over here with me. Chase him down. Go. You find him. George, no.
Look at Logan, dude. Logan wants George off the show. And it says Impulsive on the wall. He is completely allowed to get rid of George, but let's not pretend that that is not the case.
The Bobby Lee situation.
Who was the first person that jumped off the couch and said, George just left, that was not good, we have to fix this situation?
But did they not cut shit that you should have stood up for me and said, hey, you can't cut that shit? That's going to make him look like an idiot for leaving.
Have numerous times on the show, which I'm sure a number of shows do, cut things that we believe will protect the integrity or reputation of the guest.
Okay, so spoiler alert. We don't need to go through this again. I'm sure most of you guys have seen this. Bottom line, Bobby Lee was grabbing George's junk over and over and over. Like, George is behind him and he's grabbing his junk, and then George is just sitting there quietly getting mad, and then Bobby keeps fucking with him, and finally he just gets up and leaves, okay? And then they edited all of that out so it looked like George just couldn't take a single joke, and George was pissed about that. No one is even disputing that that happened, and so, he legitimately uses the words, Bobby sexually assaulted me. Aggressive. Maybe a little bit aggressive, but, whatever. Like, I don't take things that seriously, but also I wouldn't like being on the outside of that seating arrangement either, and I certainly wouldn't like a guy with his back turned, cup checking me, and, punking me like I don't belong there. You know what I mean? But, yeah, Logan definitely did not mention that part in his video, and he also did not mention the next part about the, slamming his religion. Not a whole lot of defense for that.
The show hit rock bottom, and we weren't getting paid. I was getting paid $5,000 a month.
But you did make a sizable amount of money on the show.
Okay, but the thing right there that Logan did not put in there was that he was talking about the show hit rock bottom when Logan attacked his religion, which was one of the most despicable things I've ever seen. That was insane, dude. There's no defense for that. Like, there's no defense for that situation. Even if you hate this guy, which I am pretty sure that Logan and George secretly hate each other. It's like, I don't know if you guys have ever been in a situation where you have two guys that are so non-compatible, but they are friends somehow, and so they're in the same group, but you could tell there's just this like violent tension between the two of them all the time. That's these two guys. They are not compatible at all. Those guys will never be able to go on a trip together, just the two of them, all right? Like, that's how I consider who's my real friend. I don't mean like, well, I take that back. A guy who will have your back, that's your real friend, of course. But I'm talking about like someone who I really love being around, right? Like the guys I love. Like I've got a buddy named Bill, California. I could literally go on a Europe trip with this dude and we just do whatever and I'll have fun the whole time. Same with my best friend, Mike. Mike, dude, literally I could do anything with those guys and I'll always be relaxed. We'll always be chill. I'll never feel an ounce of tension. We're both super easy. And there are other guys that are in my crew where if I went solo with them, it's like you're on edge all the time. I don't think I have anyone in my crew that are, if it's as non-compatible as George and Logan. Those two guys are not compatible socially at all. They're constantly judging each other. Logan knows that George is judging him. George knows that Logan's judging him. Anyway, they're both very emotionally vulnerable too. Like that's what this whole thing, I mean, I've known that about Logan. I can look at him and tell he gets his feelings hurt really easily, you know. He does steamroll people, doesn't really seem to be able to like think about how other people feel very often, you know, like in many cases where it's like, dude, you can't say that to that guy. You're destroying Dylan's life. You're destroying his life. This is not, you know, an equal measured warfare here. But George is also like that. And George is also one of these guys like, I'm trying to grow, man. Like listen, man, we need to grow. We need to grow together. I'm a much better person. You're like, this shit happened 6 months ago, dude. Just fucking relax, okay? Anyway, let's continue.
And by the way, always grateful. I was always grateful.
Like that?
Yeah, I don't like to talk about money.
I know he doesn't want to talk money. I know he believes it out, but George made $317,000 in the 15 months that he got paid for on Impulsive.
Wow. So he doesn't like to talk about money. Okay, so here's where, for 100% sure, you have a lie. There's a lie here. Without a doubt, there's a lie, okay? And here's where you know that there's a lie. George said that he worked for 18 months without getting paid, and Mike seemed to verify that. Okay, Logan says that in the 15 months that he worked on Impulsive, he was paid $317,000. Now, here's the deal, dude. If you're making, look at this, $30,000 December of 21, pretty good payout. That seems like that had built up. Whatever, January, for whatever reason, only 7,800, 12,000, 14,000, 17,000, 17,000, 22,000, 27,000, 24,000, 23,000, 25,000, 15,000, 45,000 in December of 2022. And I can tell you exactly why those December numbers, I just realized exactly what's going on there. And that also gives me a big piece of information that I can share with you guys, which is how George's deal worked, okay? If this is what George was getting paid on the show, then I know how he was paid on the show. He's not a salaried employee. He was getting a percentage of ad revenue, period, okay? Period. Because the reason he's getting paid more in December of 21 and December of 2022 is because at the end of the year, the firm that books your external sponsors that I have, that everyone who does a podcast or a show has, everyone has one of these firms unless they have in-house people that do it, which is a pain in the balls that most people don't do. They collect all of the back-owed ad read money from the companies that you're doing ad reads for, because usually, you know, you're back a month or 2 or 3 months getting paid for things that you did in April. You're getting paid for in like June or July. At the end of the year, you close out all of the accounts. So in December, you always get the biggest check by far because they're usually collecting like 2 to 3 months from all of the ad reads that you've done, you know, previously in that year. And this is double verified because of December 22 being 45,000, and you go back to November of 22 and that was short. See, you got 23,000, 25,000, then November is 15,000, and then in December it's 45,000, which means he was paid 2 months for December plus the third month that they were short in November, okay? So what that means, again, is that George was on either a revenue share or a pure equity deal. That gets confusing in a second. I'll explain exactly what I mean. And also, that means that when he was not getting paid on the show, right, for however long that he's talking about, it means it's because he was a partner in the show. He was building the show up so that when the show was going to start producing revenue, that's when he was going to get paid, and it worked out. You know what I mean? I mean, I could tell you that without them telling me. Oh, we weren't getting paid. Well, that's because you're not an employee. You're getting a revenue share on ad reads. It's not like Logan was having you do slave labor. You agreed to be a partner in the show. I know that from how this payment happens. Now, in a second, Logan's going to say that George had 10% of the show. I have no idea if that's accurate, and I explain in a second why. However, if you want to back into what Logan was probably making on the show, I would bet that Mike is making twice as much as George, if not 2.5 times as much as George. So for Mike, that's probably $620,000 or so that he made during this period of time. And then Logan is probably doing around $2 million during this same amount of time. Could be more. I'm not 100% sure, but definitely significantly more than this. If George had 10% and Mike had 25%, you guys can do that math. That's what I would guess. Mike 25%, George 10%, Logan the remainder, and they've already taken the costs off the top of the ad revenue stuff before they even do this.
The work requirements consisted of about 3 days a month, 3 hours each day, traveling the world, networking, and meeting some of the coolest people ever. It comes out to about $2,300 per hour, and he also had 10% equity of the entire show.
Yeah. How did he have 10% equity of the show if he left the show, though? Okay, that's the way that works. Like, that's not possible to be true unless George still has equity in the show. Equity means you own it. You can't, like, unless they bought him out. I mean, if they bought him out, then they bought him out. I would love to hear that, though. Okay, equity means shares in the company. Okay, not revenue share. Revenue share is a completely different thing. If he had 10% equity, then they would have had to buy him out to fire him, period. Or he still owns it. So, anyway, let's continue.
Not you, not Caleb, not Kevin, not Dylan. Nobody fucking called me when I got fired.
George did not get fired. He quit. I'll touch on that in a second. But after he quit, I called him frequently. I reached out. I wanted to reconcile the friendship.
Okay, so this is where it gets really dicey. This is sneaky, dude. Because when I first saw this, right? So in order, I saw the George and Mike interview highlights, and then I watched the entire thing of them talking about the Logan and they made Logan look terrible. Mike was not really in a position to heavily defend Logan because it's not him, and he's trying to separate himself from Logan while simultaneously defending him. And George has a huge vendetta and bone to pick with Logan, as you can see through these text messages. Like, the person who is mad is George. Okay, he's the one who feels he was wronged. Whatever. But so when I saw this and I just looked at it, I'm like, look at this, dude. I'm like, dude, Logan is literally trying to be his boy and George is just ghosting him. You know, like, okay, so clearly what George said is not true because Logan was reaching out. Then I looked closer at this, okay? So I'm going to do this exactly the way that I experienced it for you guys, okay? So look at this. So Logan, you coming to WrestleMania, and then George says not true and no. So whatever Logan said above that, he's responding to, and he said not true. So have no idea what he said, but Logan made a decision not to put that into the text message. He said, oh, that's what I was told. Not sure. Coming to birthday dinner at least, ? And no response. Okay. So George is mad. George straight ghosted him on a birthday invitation. So I read that. I'm like, dude, that's messed up. You could at least just tell him no. And then Logan again, missed you yesterday, Georgie. No response. April 13th. What's up, gangsta? How you living? And he says, good, Bubba. How you doing? Immensely happy and healthy. Just wanted to check in on you. And then George is like, amazing, bro. Glad to hear it. Thank you. And then that's it. Doesn't, it's dismissive. Then again, here, Logan, hey, gangster, no response. And then Logan is like, hey, let me know when you have a second to talk today. I wanted to have a conversation and then watch as this scrolls up because George is like, no, I don't want to talk.
I invited him to my birthday party and WrestleMania. And
okay, check it. He says, I want to get on the horn. And George is like, nah, I'm okay. GB. I don't know what GB means. So he's like, I don't want to talk. So again, when I first saw that, I'm like, okay, George is a dick, man. Logan's trying to be friendly and he's being a dick about it. So that was my first impression. Then I looked a little bit closer at this and I'll show you exactly what I saw. When were these sent? Okay. When did all of this shit go down? Right? When did the Bobby Lee thing and George thing happen? What was the date of that? I'll show you. November of 2022. November of 2022 is when this happened. And everybody knows this is the inciting incident to where everything falls apart. November of 2022. Okay, 18 months ago is when this happened. Now, when did these text messages happen? All right, so when did these text messages happen? You have to go 3 layers to figure this out. April 2nd, 2023. Oh, all right, so this was only 5-6 months after the whole thing happened. And then now Logan is reaching back out. He wants to be friends with George. That's not a short amount of time though, really. Like you have a falling out with your boy, everything goes sideways. Let's say everything really blew up by the end of 2022. Okay, so 4 months later, I guess this is actually technically 3 months later, now he's reaching out. 3 months later, right? So it's like, oh, I guess that wasn't that much time. But did anything else happen in between when he left the show and now when Logan wants to be friends again? Anything that might make an impact on how Logan Paul sees value in people? Correct. George Janko launched his show, and this is in, oh, you guys can't see that. I'm sorry. Let me make that a little better for you. March of 2023, he is crushing it on his own, right? He's crushing it on his own. And as it appears, he was still on the Impulsive podcast, like up until right before this. Like right before this, he was still on the Impulsive podcast, because I'm going to show you in a second where the real problems between these two actually came from, because it does actually seem like they were still friendly from Bobby Lee to, like the friendship blows up at the beginning of March, and I'll show you exactly why. But the value, I think, that you see from Logan being very desperate to make this relationship put back together is probably related to George having this enormous platform of his own now. I'll just pose the question to you. Do you think that if George was unemployed on his own in April after they had this big falling out, do you really think that Logan's going to be blowing him up, trying to make back friends? Like George literally told Logan that he wanted to punch him in the face, that he would whip his ass. Do you think that Logan is going to be chasing him around to become friends again in the event that George was like unemployed and just on his couch, like just being like a sorry ass? I don't think so. I think the fact that George has a huge platform falls right into how Logan values people, right? Like Logan's like, this guy has too big of a platform. I don't want an enemy that's going to be talking shit about me, that can expose things. He is so adverse to negative feedback from the public, which has got to be really tough on him, man, because people hammer his ass. Like I hammer him all the time, but that can stop tomorrow. He just has to drop the Dylan Danis lawsuit. You know what I mean? Like he just has to stop it. He was never a big deal to me until he sued Dylan Danis and bragged about bankrupting him. As long as he's not trying to bankrupt people, he's not even on my fucking radar. But until that lawsuit's dropped, he stays. So anyway, let's get into exactly where this relationship actually blew up, and we can discuss how, who's at fault here.
He also unfollowed all the people he mentioned on Instagram, which is maybe why they didn't call him. I don't know. I can't speak for them, but he still does not follow them to this day.
And then on my birthday, you guys shot 3 episodes, so I couldn't show up.
The 2 episodes he's talking about, not 3, were shot 4 days after George's birthday. His birthday's on January 3rd. We shot those episodes on January 7th.
And the first episode of the George Janko show is January 19th. Like, a week and a half later, right? So that was the moment where George was leaving the show. He's saying that they shot it on his birthday or whatever. Logan and Mike on the show literally said he's prioritizing his family over everything else. That's why he's not here. We're in Vegas, whatever. George was quitting, right? George quit. Seems like, at least it seems like. But to the point where both Mike and George validated on that show that like things had gotten weird and everything was all messed up and it wasn't going to work out. So like, I don't know, like the circumstance of exactly who fired, who quit, whatever, doesn't really matter a whole bunch. But bottom line is when they did those 2 episodes in Vegas, okay, for Logan to act as if, it's just because, he spent time with his family and then, whatever. It's like, come on, dude. Clearly there was more going on than that if he started his own show 12 days later. Both George and Logan are misrepresenting this thing. That's what I'm saying. Like whenever you get into any detail, every single detail that these two guys talk about is murky because they both can't be true. Like they're both misrepresenting things for 100% sure. And this is just another example that proves it.
We were already in Vegas signing the UFC to Prime, and as we do, want to capitalize on the location and our use of time and energy and the guests in that city. George didn't come to work because he wanted to spend time with his family for his belated birthday, which I totally understand and we even praised.
One of the things that I love about George, he prioritizes his family and friends over anything.
Okay, so Mike praised him for that. Logan gave an affirmative nod. But again, I'll reiterate. Mike is good people, dude. Like Mike sees the best in everybody. He really does, dude. That's I learned a lot about that guy watching that interview. And Mike is just one of those guys. He is going to find the good in people, period. And he is going to try to mitigate conflict always. That is who he is. I like him, dude. I'll be honest. I like the guy. But I mean, that's probably why he dated Lana Rhoades. I mean, it seems like from pretty far away, you'd be able to recognize like, that girl's damaged goods, dude. Like that's damaged goods for sure. And he's like, but he found the good things in her. And it's like, okay, I promise you it's not going to work out, dude. But I see her as blah, blah, blah. It's like, that's why. Anyway, but let's continue, and we'll get to the meat of their conflict, which is right here, how that blew up, irrevocably.
Got my show going, and then not only was I controlled and pushed around on Impulsive, but then Logan's making calls and directing my show. He told me that I couldn't take Celsius.
So this is the big one. Making calls, trying to make it seem like I wanted to control his show is absolutely ridiculous. As you can see right here, I was like, hey, we got to get you Prime because I saw him drinking our competitor, and he told me to call him. He was filming my reaction to tell me he took a deal with a competitor.
Okay, yeah. So bottom line on this, the bottom line on this is this right here demonstrates that George is the one who quit, okay? Like this is crystal clear. George knew he was going to quit. That's why he started his own show. He started his own show 2 months after the Bobby Lee thing. I don't blame him. Now, per both of these guys, George was still on the show in March. So he started his show in January because he knows he's going to leave the show. Whether that's because he's like, I don't want to be on the show anymore, or he's like, oh, I'm getting pushed out, is kind of irrelevant. But we know because from both sides, in March, he's technically still on Impulsive. Now, let Logan explain why he had an issue with him taking Celsius, which is absolute common sense. And you want to know what's hilarious about this part? Actually, let me, I take that back. Hang on. Let Logan explain to you why he had an issue with George taking Celsius as a sponsor. And then I'm going to go back to something that happened between Logan and Jake, which just demonstrates like, bro, self-awareness, not so much, guy. Listen to this.
I told him, please don't film. Like, I'd like to talk about this. I hope you're joking, by the way. The truth is, I thought it was a bad look that my best friend and co-host took a brand deal with our competitor without consulting me, asking me, giving us even a chance to match it before he signed the deal. Because the audience that he's building, at least at the time, on his own podcast was being funneled directly from the podcast that I was building with him. I said, hey, dude, I understand you need to make money. The entire...
I'll read this out loud because it's important, okay? Totally understand you have to do what you have to do. By the way, if you haven't seen the George thing, George said he needs money. Celsius offered him a brand deal. Now, what George said is that he said to Logan, dude, just match the deal. I'll even take half of what they're offering to do Prime. And that Logan told him, I'm not giving you shit because you're only in the position that you're in because of me. Now, the circumstances of that conversation are very important to determine who is the fucking asshole. Listen, like if George got an offer from Celsius, okay, and these guys really are friends, there's an absolute no-brainer here. He can't take that deal, right? He can't take that deal, but Logan has to match the deal, right? If Logan's making $50 million a month per Logan's video, right? Like Logan acted as if George was representing that, he's showing that he's making $11 million a month as if it was his personal income. What George was actually saying was that Prime is making $11 million a week, okay? And then Logan's like, oh, we made $50 million a month. He's like, okay, well, he doesn't care about your personal income. He's talking about Prime. So he's saying, if Celsius offered me this, why can't you just match the deal so that I don't have to take Celsius as a deal? Or take Celsius. I don't want to take Celsius, but I need the money. So give me a Prime deal. That's not an unreasonable request at all, and that's exactly what Logan should have done. Now, so here's what Logan, but also Logan is completely in the right to be like, you can't both be sponsored by Celsius and be on Impulsive, okay? You can't have it both ways, right? I think that this was a way that Logan sought to get rid of George, right? I think he wanted to get rid of George, and I think George probably wanted off the show, but George was like, yeah, I'd be happy to take Prime. Anyway, okay, so he says, totally understand you have to do what you have to do, and I support your decision. I respect the fact that you're focusing on your platform, and I understand you have to pay the bills. I'm sorry Impulsive isn't enough for that. Just like you're looking out for yourself, I have to do the same. My business partners and I don't find it appropriate to promote one of our biggest competitors. I'm excited to watch you build your podcast, and when and if a deal is up and you want to come on Impulsive, the invite is open. I'd like to talk about how to move forward with this amicably on social because I'm sure we can avoid the lame public back and forth and handle this in a mature way that our 8 years of friendship deserves. We support you and we drive the long-term success. We will always be friends first. This is just business. I'm excited to see you at WrestleMania and my birthday dinner. Love you, bro. Okay, so right here, okay, this is how I read this. This is Logan getting rid of George. Okay? This is Logan getting rid of George. This is not him offering him a deal. This is him using the fact that he got a Celsius deal to fire him. All right, let's continue.
Text is right here that I sent him after our conversation because I did understand his position if he needed to make money, but I thought it was also a little odd because he did make $317,000 in 15 months. Regardless,
that's probably legit. But again, I think that Logan is trying to act as if he wasn't pushing George out, and he clearly was.
I did tell him I can't have him on Impulsive if he's going to take the deal with the competitor, but if after he makes the money he wants to come back to the podcast, he's more than welcome.
Hey, man,
You fired him. You fired him. He knew you were going to. He got the Celsius deal, looking to get it match. You didn't match it. You fired him. It's fine.
you're at, there's no room for you to grow. They won't let you grow. They will not let you grow.
I thought saying that to Mike was a little crazy.
This, the whole, like, growth. George must have said, I've grown 100 times. It's like, bro, this is like, you've grown because you have a great podcast of your own now. So you feel really confident because you're not relying on anybody. You know what I mean? It's like, anyway, whatever. But I also agree. You like, Logan Paul is not letting Mike grow. Where is Mike if he never met Logan Paul?
He's grown a lot. He has 2.7 million subscribers since we met. He's a multimillionaire, a best-selling author. I tried as much as I could to help him get into those positions, and it's not entirely because of me. Mike is a phenom in his own right, and he capitalized on the platform that I gave him, which is awesome. Just like George is doing now, but if that's not growth, like, what is?
That's fair. That is fair.
In fact, I think people forget, like, I praised George for starting a podcast, like, a lot.
Georgie started his own podcast. I think it's a great idea. I always love when my co-hosts venture out and do their own things. Congratulations. It's awesome, guys. Check out his podcast.
That... You know, I would love if Logan Paul pointed people to mine. He's all, you want to see someone who's talked a mad amount of shit about me and seems to take it really personal that I'm trying to bankrupt a fighter? Jesse on Fire really pisses him off. Really pisses him off. And it does, you know. But yeah, go for, you know, I mean, like, I don't think he's going to do that because he's smart enough not to point people to, you know, people who talk shit. But I think with George's case, this was strategic because he's like, I need to keep this guy close so that he doesn't blow me up, and that failed.
And also saying they won't let you grow was a little hurtful because I thought at least I helped Mike do some of the things that he did, and I even encouraged him to start his own podcast.
I think you should take a page out of Georgie's book and start a show of your own.
There's no greater feeling than watching people you love succeed. I tried to give people around me a platform.
I also think that that in and of itself is probably partially because Logan feels responsible for Mike with Impulsive, and Logan probably doesn't really give a shit about Impulsive because he's making so much fucking money from Prime. Let's continue.
And if they capitalize on it, fantastic. Mike and George did. And George will even tell you this off camera. I encouraged him to pursue media and comedy since 2015. I really believe in the kid, and I still do. There's a lot more. I'm not going to get into it, but this is...
Let me tell you something else about George, though. George was in that movie. God damn it. I don't want to look it up. Okay, whatever. You guys will be able to find it. Where they did a movie that's like Hostel, and it's about Logan Paul, a fake Logan Paul. He gets trapped in like a hostile situation, and George Janko's in it, basically playing himself. Or he might be playing Mike Majlak in it. Whatever. It's actually a good flick, dude. I should look up what the name of it is, but I don't feel like it because I've been talking for too long. But anyway, so that is what's really going on in this response. It is, I don't know, you know, partially honest, I guess. The whole thing about the cost being, like, I mean, if I was going to summarize this, I would do it like this. George said he was paying $10,000 a month to be on Impulsive. Ludicrous. Stupid. There's no way that's true. If he was getting his, you know, cost paid for, what the fuck are you talking about? But this whole thing about like, oh, you know, he was somewhere in there is a blow up fight. Okay, a blow up fight over the Celsius deal where George said he would attack Logan Paul and punch him in the face. And then Logan says, you're only where you are because of me, yada, yada, yada. I mean, whatever, dude. They blew up at each other because George was getting fired and Logan was not being honest about it. That is what happened. So, I don't know. I've been talking long enough. This video is 10 times longer than I thought it was going to be. I thought I was going to be able to do both interviews in one video, but now I got to go do the George and Malchik video separately.